She stole $1.8 million. This one habit would have stopped her. A bookkeeper at a small Indiana business wrote herself 436 checks over 4.5 years, $3,000 to $5,000 at a time, up to 15 times a month. That's $1.8 million. And nobody noticed until it was almost too late. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how it happened and the few boring controls that would have stopped it in month 1. This isn't a hypothetical. It's a real case, prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of Indiana. The company repaired and refurbished medical X-ray equipment. A normal, unremarkable small business. The kind that could be any client you've ever worked with or your very own business. Their bookkeeper had 2 jobs: record every deposit and payment in the company's ledger and manage the checkbook. Both jobs, one person. As a chartered accountant who also runs my own business, I want to be clear about something up front. This isn't a story about a criminal mastermind outsmarting a sophisticated system. In fact, it's the exact opposite. It's a story about how far a completely ordinary gap in a completely ordinary business can go for years before anyone notices. Most owners assume fraud like this requires someone brilliant or a business too small and trusting to have seen it coming. Neither is true here. Fraud like this doesn't require a criminal mastermind. It requires nobody else checking. So do this. Think about who in your business currently records transactions and can move money. If it's the same person, you've just found your single point of failure. That single point of failure is exactly how she was able to write herself over 400 checks without anyone catching on. Here's how. How she hid the $1.8 million she stole from the business in plain sight, and it wasn't complicated. Most people picture financial fraud as something elaborate, offshore accounts, forged documents, a paper trail built to survive an audit. This one required none of that. She wrote checks to herself, and on the memo line, she wrote something that looked like an ordinary business expense. That was the entire disguise. The real concealment happened somewhere else entirely, in the company's own ledger, which she also controlled. She deliberately understated the business's revenue month after month, so the numbers the owner saw never reflected what was actually coming in. Illustration of how a scheme like that typically works to make it concrete. Picture a $10,000 repair job. The customer pays the full $10,000 into the business bank account. Real money, genuinely there. In the ledger though, only part of that job gets recorded as revenue. The rest gets logged as a discount or a credit issued to the customer that was never actually given. The bank statement shows $10,000 in. The books show less. Multiply that gap across hundreds of invoices over a 4.5-year period, and you get a business that looks like it's barely surviving, while the missing difference quietly funds someone else's checks. To the owners, the business simply looked tight, not unusual for a small operation. It wasn't scraping by. It was actually being drained on a schedule by someone they trusted completely. This is the part that should genuinely unsettle any founder watching this video. The most dangerous fraud isn't hidden behind complexity. It's hidden behind a story you have no reason to question from a trusted person. So do this. Pull up your own revenue for last month. Compare it to what actually landed in the bank, line by line, not just the total. Here's what makes this even harder to catch. Even the business's own accountant was working from the same false numbers. Why the company's own accountant never caught it either. Every single year, the bookkeeper handed the company's ledger to the accountant, and the accountant worked from those very numbers. That much is confirmed by the source. What follows is my own explanation of why that setup typically fails. Not a reported specific in this case. An accountant reviewing a ledger that's already been quietly understated generally has no way of knowing that the real revenue was ever higher. The books can look consistent and still not be true. Most founders assume that having an accountant is itself a safeguard against this kind of thing. In general, it's an important safeguard against a lot of things, but not against a bookkeeper who controls the raw numbers and can manipulate them before anyone else ever sees them, since an accountant working from provided figures generally just works off what they've been given. This is why a fix for this kind of gap generally has to happen upstream of the accountant, not downstream. By the time an accountant is reviewing anything, the story has typically already been written. Your accountant checks that the numbers add up. They can't check what never made it into the numbers at all or identify fraudulent activity. So do this. Ask yourself honestly, does anyone other than your bookkeeper ever see the raw bank statements before they're summarized for you? So if the accountant can't catch this and the owners couldn't see it either, what actually would have? The boring financial controls that would have stopped this in 1 month. Here it is, and is genuinely unglamorous. Someone who's not the bookkeeper, reconciling the bank statement against the ledger every single month. Not reviewing a summary, not trusting a total. Actually matching what the bank shows came in against what the ledger says was earned. This separation of duties between different people is what is called segregation of duties. If someone independent had matched total deposits on the bank statement against total revenue recorded in the ledger, even once a month, the gap between what actually came in and what was recorded would have surfaced immediately. That single check would have caught this on the revenue side alone. The same principle extends to anything that can quietly reduce recorded revenue without a second signature. A credit note or a discount should need someone else's approval too, for exactly this reason. Over and above that, a second and separate check matters. Someone independently reviewing monthly expenses and cash payments would have noticed the other half of this pattern. Repeated payments of a similar size going to the same person month after month, over and above their salary. That's the embezzlement showing up on the expense side, not the revenue side. And on its own, it's just as obvious once anyone is actually looking for it. This is the same principle behind everything I teach on financial controls. And it's not complicated. It's just not automatic. The businesses that avoid this aren't smarter. They just built a few boring habits the business in this story never had. So do this. Block time this month for an independent bank reconciliation done by someone other than whoever enters those transactions. If that's currently one person, that's a gap to close first. Want a simple way to check your own business against this exact gap? I've built something for that. I've put this into a free governance starter checklist. It has a section specifically on segregation of duties, so you can check your own business against the exact gap that let this go on for 4.5 years. Grab it using the link in the description or comment controls below and I'll send it your way. Next time, I'm getting personal. Why I'm so passionate about working with founder businesses. Subscribe so you don't miss it.